Hey guys, today I have another video about JoJo Part 5. If I haven't made it obvious enough, I absolutely love Part 5. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's not perfect because nothing in the world is perfect except for Zoro. But it's perfect to me. There is so much to talk about with Part 5, and today's video is about a topic that I haven't really seen talked about a lot, surprisingly. Did Diavolo deserve the infinite death loop? The reason I didn't just put this as the title is to avoid spoiling anyone, just in case this video popped up in the feed of someone who isn't done with Part 5 or hasn't started it. So I simplified the title to Did Diavolo Deserve His Fate instead. So anyone who's seen the ending of Part 5 will probably remember that Giorno used his Gold Experience Requiem and sent Diavolo into an ending that has no ending. Or in simpler terms, Diavolo will experience every death for all of eternity. Which still doesn't make sense to me because, yeah, there's billions and billions of ways you can die, but there isn't an infinite number of ways to die. The number will eventually run out. So what happens when there's no more ways to die? Does the cycle just like reset or something? Diavolo has been dying for like 23 years at this point as well. Like, is he still dying? I'm assuming that in 24 years the number would have ran out already, but okay, anyway, that doesn't matter. Getting back on topic, when I watched Part 5 for the first time and I learned of Diavolo's fate, my initial reaction was, well, he kind of deserves it. Serves him right. He killed so many innocent people and even tried to kill his own daughter just to protect his identity. He brutally tortured Sorbet right in front of Gelato, sold drugs to kids and ruined their lives, killed 3 of my favorite JoJo characters. He's a disgusting and irredeemable person. And while I still do feel that way now, after I really thought about it and looked at things from a more unbiased standpoint, I started to have second thoughts. Like, yeah, Diavolo is a terrible person and deserves some form of a painful death, but like, does he deserve to die an infinite number of times? Well, that's why I'm here to talk about that today. First, I will be looking back on the bad things that Diavolo has done that we are aware of, talk about them, and then give my final thoughts in the end. Now, obviously, this video won't have every single bad thing Diavolo has done because there's no doubting that Diavolo committed crimes before the events of Part 5 that aren't mentioned. And also, there could be some things that he's done that I forgot to add in this video, so if you notice anything missing, please let me know. But anyways, with all that aside, let's get into the video. As I mentioned, I'm going to start with talking about Diavolo's crime, starting with... To my knowledge, this is the first notable crime of Diavolo that we learn about, and I know that technically Diavolo only really killed Sorbet since Gelato committed suicide, but technically Diavolo caused Gelato to commit suicide, so I consider Diavolo to be responsible for both of their deaths. Sorbet's fate is, in my opinion, the most brutal death in the JoJo series, and probably one of the most brutal deaths I've heard of in a piece of fiction. And even though him and Gelato were criminals, I think any rational person would agree that these 2 deaths, mainly Sorbet's, were absolute overkill. Sorbet and Gelato were 2 gang members part of La Squadra who were always seen together and were very close. So Diavolo unalived them because they were gay and he hates gay people. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, but no joke, I deadass saw an argument on why Part 5 is the worst part, and someone said that it's because all the gay characters die. And I will definitely be talking about this in the future. Okay, but anyway, just a warning before we continue. I'm assuming that all of you know where this is going since everyone watching this video has most likely already seen Part 5. But just in case you haven't and are watching this video because you don't care about spoilers, or if you do know what happens and you just don't want to hear about the brutal way that they were killed again, or whatever the case is, skip to this point in the video. Sorbet was tortured by being cut into 36 pieces, starting with his toes and then moving up to the rest of his body, which leads Sorbet to die in a very slow and painful death. As for Gelato, the mix of watching his partner get brutally tortured right in front of him drove him to commit suicide by suffocating himself with his cloth gag. Days later, Sorbet's body was sent to La Squadra to serve as a warning to the surviving gang members what would happen to them if they also tried to uncover Diavolo's identity. And after the tragic and brutal deaths of Sorbet and Gelato, La Squadra decides to never try to uncover Diavolo's identity again until they later find out that he has a daughter. These are both just such awful ways to die. Watching someone you care about get cut into pieces right in front of you and not being able to do anything about it must be so agonizing. And to think about how terrifying it must have been for La Squadra to receive a body from one of their own members, and I just can't even imagine being slowly tortured to death like that. It's just like, ugh. But regardless, the torture of Sorbet is beyond inhuman and sickening, and overprotecting his identity, like, it just really goes to show how sick and disgusting of a human Diavolo is, or was. Yeah, I know, it's fiction and whatever, but this is still incredibly messed up, and like I said before, taking everything into consideration, this is probably the most brutal death in the entire series. In Diavolo's final message to Bruno's gang, he gives them one last assignment. He tells them that one member of the gang must deliver Trish to him in the bell tower, then their mission would be complete. Which, let me just say, is already iffy. Like, okay, I understand I'm not a gangster, but like, really think about this for a sec. Why would he make it so clear that only one member is allowed to go? And obviously I know the reason. It's because that one gang member and Trish would be a lot easier to take out than 6 gang members and Trish. But I'm talking about the gang. Like, even Giorno, Fugo, and Bruno, the smartest members of the game, like, they're smart. Like, why didn't any of them think, hey, isn't it kind of suspicious that he only wants one of us to go? Okay, I'm sorry, I went on a little side rant, but anyway, Bruno ends up being the one to go, and at first, he doesn't know Diavolo's true intentions because, again, none of their dumbasses decided to question Diavolo's rules. So on the elevator ride up, Bruno assures Trish that her father loved her and wanted her to be safe, like a liar. However, Bruno realizes that Diavolo only wanted Trish brought to him so that he could unalive her himself and erase any potential leads to him and his identity, and Bruno is absolutely enraged at the fact that Diavolo would unalive his own child, and this is when he decides to betray Passione for good. And this isn't really relevant, but I'm not a really big fan of Trish. I have a script explaining why I don't like her, which will be a video in the future. I don't hate her, there are just so many things that I don't like about her. But come on, like, she's 15, she's a kid. She doesn't deserve to die. She hasn't done anything that bad to deserve a father like Diavolo. Like, I just can't imagine being so selfish and so heartless that you're willing to kill your own daughter. Your own flesh and blood, an innocent person for your own personal gain. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but in my opinion, Abbacchio has the saddest death in the series so far. I haven't read part 8 or 9, so maybe there's some sad ones that I haven't seen yet, but from what I've seen so far, Abbacchio's is definitely up there. I may be biased because he's one of my favorite characters, but even if he wasn't, his death was still extremely sad. Abbacchio is one of the most relatable characters in the series for me so far, and his death really broke my heart. It's so sad to me that someone who was once so positive and filled with so much hope and passion turned into someone who's so depressed and self-critical. And what makes Abbacchio's death even sadder to me is the fact that just before he died, he helped this group of kids get their soccer ball after it got stuck, and then he smiles and walks away. And then right after, he's impaled through the chest with King Crimson's hand. Finally see Abbacchio show some sort of genuine happiness. Pretty much all the other times we see him smiles when he's making fun of Giorno, or when he has the upper hand against an enemy, but here he's genuinely smiling. Abbacchio had had such a sad life already. He did not deserve this death. Yes, he died almost instantly, so thankfully he didn't suffer long, but he's been suffering for pretty much his whole life. He died so young too, 11 days after his 21st birthday. His death comes out of nowhere, and I remember my jaw literally falling to the floor when I saw his death for the first time. This death really surprised me. I was so sad that he had to die, but what made it even sadder to me was the afterlife scene and the way Narancia reacted. I didn't cry the first time I watched this, but I did tear up when I rewatched it like a couple days later after I finished it. Overall, I really love Abbacchio, and his death really broke my heart. But to be fair, the gang shouldn't have left Abbacchio by himself. That's what made him such an easy target. After Fugo left, there were 5 people in the gang remaining, not counting Trish, who was in the turtle. They really should have stayed together, and I really wish that had happened. Maybe then Abbacchio's death could have been avoided. But overall, if you like Abbacchio or not, you gotta admit that his death was really sad, and he did not deserve to die at all. This one is extra personal since Narancia used to be my favorite character in the series. This is also the first time I've ever cried in an anime before. Unlike with Abbacchio, because of the time skip, we don't know for sure if this was an instant death or if it took a couple seconds for Narancia to die. But no matter how long it took, this was still an extremely brutal death. It was so sad to see Narancia, someone whose entire life had been surrounded by darkness, killed just like that. And right as he was starting to look forward to his future too. Before he is killed, Narancia fantasizes about going back to school and going back to his hometown to eat pizza. After seeing one of his best and only friends die just the day before, he is trying to be positive. Finally, Narancia is looking forward to his future, only for him to be brutally unalived by Diavolo. His death hurts even more after the fact when you finish Golden Wind and realize that Abbacchio had helped the gang get closer to the boss by holding on to the piece of stone that had Diavolo's face, and Bruno gives Giorno the Requiem arrow, which allows Giorno to access Gold Experience Requiem, but Narancia didn't have anything like that tied into his death. He pretty much died for nothing, which makes it all the more sad. His death really shocked me the first time I saw it. I really wish that I had made some theories about part 5 before I finished it. The only theory that I remember making was that Trish was gonna die before the end, and obviously that was wrong, so I was a fucking idiot. But even though I hadn't really made predictions on who would die, except for Trish, I did make predictions on who would live, and one of those characters was Narancia. In my mind, I was like, there's just no way they would kill him. They just wouldn't do it. And then he actually died, and honestly, I was just more shocked than sad at first. The same thing happened with Bruno's death, which I will get to later. I just couldn't believe he was actually dead. And even now, it's still hard for me to accept. Even when I rewatched part 5, I cried at his death both times. And what's worse, Narancia dies the day after Abakio. Since Narancia died on April 6th, he never lived to see his 18th birthday on May 20th. Narancia is a really sweet character, and his death hurt a lot. And this scene that happens after he died just made it so much worse. Like, I cried at Narancia's death, but this scene made me, like, full-on cry. Giorno and Narancia are my top 2 favorite characters in JoJo, so when I saw this interaction, I was like, oh my god, I had to take a break from watching the show, I'm gonna be so honest. And a lot of people miss this, but Giorno even holds Narancia's body while everyone else was just keeping a lookout. Also, we know that because of his past, Giorno hasn't cried in years, meaning that Narancia's death was the thing that pushed him over the edge. The way Giorno talks to Narancia and cares for him is just so fucking sweet.
Stay put, okay? We'll be right back. You'll be safe here. I won't let anyone hurt you again. I promise. And don't you worry. When it's over, we'll bring you home.
I could go on and on about this scene, but I don't want to make this just a Narancia-focused video. So overall, Narancia's death is still, in my opinion, the saddest death in the entire series. Bruno is another one of my favorite characters in JoJo, and although I was sad that he died, I kind of almost laugh about it now. Not the fact that he died, but like my reaction to his death. I still remember watching Bruno's soul literally descend into heaven. I still thought, it's okay, I'm not gonna be upset because they're gonna bring him back. Like, there's just no way they'd kill him off. Obviously, he never came back, and I'm still upset about that. Like, I don't understand why my dumbass thought, yeah, his soul is going into heaven, but like, he's not dead. He's gonna come back. God, I don't know how old I was when I watched part 5. It was like, I started it like November 29th, 2022 or something, and then I finished it, I think, December 4th or 5th. So I was 15 when I started it and 16 when I finished it. Well, damn, my 16-year-old self must have been really dumb or just heavily in denial. But anyways, moving on, there is just something for me about Bruno that makes him so comforting. He has this vibe to him that I can't really put into words. He's definitely a huge comfort character for me, as I know he is for a lot of people. He seems like someone who would be a great friend in real life. Of all the characters in part 5, I really thought he would live. I wanted him to live. And that's what made his death all the more sad to me because it took me by complete surprise. And my heart just kept breaking when I heard Bruno give this goodbye speech to Giorno. These two have one of my favorite dynamics in the entire JoJo series. So seeing an emotional interaction between those characters is gonna hit me extra hard. I still wish something could have been done so that everyone would have survived Diavolo. But getting on to the topic of Bruno's actual death, it's weird to say that I like it, but I don't really know how else to phrase it. I really love the imagery and his speech, as I mentioned before. Overall, part 5, in my opinion, has the most impactful and beautiful deaths, and Bruno's is no different. In my opinion, it's absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that it was more bittersweet than depressing, because with Bruno, he seemed content with the life that he had lived. He was genuinely grateful to Giorno, made his peace with death, and died with no regrets. And a lot of other people noticed this too. But with other characters like Abakio, he didn't really get any form of resolution until after he died, and Narancia wanted to live because he finally had a reason to live, which is what made their deaths so sad. So Bruno's death is definitely more bittersweet, which sets it apart from the rest. I still think Bruno's got such a beautiful soul. I mean, like everyone in his gang does, but Bruno definitely stands out. I just think he's got such an amazing mindset. Like, how can someone be that peaceful knowing they're literally dying? And the same way I mentioned before when I said I love the way Giorno talked to Narancia, I love the way Bruno talks to Giorno as he's dying. So overall, I think Bruno has one of the most impactful deaths in the whole series, but I love the fact that his life ends on a more positive note. Araki really is such a fantastic writer. So this may not be as bad as murder or anything, but this is a crime that in my opinion really shows what kind of person you are if you partake in it. You have to be a really scummy bastard to sell drugs to minors knowing what they do. I'm in high school about to go into my senior year. Well, technically I'm supposed to be out of high school already. Last year was supposed to be my senior year, but I was held back because my birthday is December 1st and I have a late birthday, so my mom held me back, so I'm technically supposed to be graduated already. So I'm technically not a senior. I was supposed to have graduated last year. I'm not even supposed to be in high school right now technically, but anyway, you get the idea. Long story short, I am currently in high school. And I know how high school kids work. A lot of them vape and do drugs in the school bathrooms and whatever. And if they want to do that, that's their choice. I can't tell them what to do. I'm not a cop. It's not legal, but again, it's really not my business. Again, it's their choice. The saddest thing is that stores are willing to sell these things to minors just so they can get some cash. Drugs and vapes and stuff really can destroy people's lives. Again, it's their choice to take it, but where do you think they're getting it? Either from their friends or from a store that's willingly giving it to them. So maybe this video is useless because I think the pretty much objectively correct answer to this question is obvious. So, did Diavolo deserve the infinite death loop?
No.
Even though Diavolo's a shithead and they made me cry, he doesn't deserve to die an infinite number of times. It's obvious that if Diavolo wasn't killed, he would still be doing bad things. It's not like he'd randomly have a wake-up call one day and automatically become a law-abiding citizen. And like I mentioned before, we only know a few of the crimes that Diavolo has committed, but just think about how many we don't know about. I can't even imagine how many bad things Diavolo has done before Golden Wind takes place, and to think about how many more crimes he would still be committing right now if he wasn't dead. But that being said, I really don't think that anyone deserves the infinite death loop. The way I view the world, at least by my moral standards, it's an eye for an eye. But I mean, in my opinion, if you kill an innocent person in cold blood, you deserve to suffer more than the person you killed. So it's more like an eye for two eyes. I don't know. Also, something I want to mention so I don't sound like a fucking idiot. I started recording my audio for this video on August 24th. It's currently the 25th at 5:59 in the morning.
5:59! It be the night guard!
I can't sleep, so I decided to finish recording. Something worth mentioning, I'm aware that Diavolo wasn't the one who actually killed Sorbet and Gelato. My dumbass completely forgot that he got Chocolata to do it. As you could see, this shadow was clearly Chocolata and not Diavolo. So that was a mistake on my part, but I mean, I'm just gonna give myself the benefit of the doubt and assume that Diavolo ordered to have Chocolata do this. I mean, he obviously wanted them dead because they tried to figure out his identity. So technically, he's still responsible for both of their deaths. And besides, he's killed enough people with his own hands, and again, who knows about how many people he's killed before Golden Wind even started. So I wouldn't really say infinite death loop. Maybe this was the better alternative for Diavolo, having a sort of a shorter death loop, reliving all the deaths of the people he's killed but harsher. And originally in this script I had a whole sequence of events to give Diavolo an alternate death, but to be honest, as I was reading over it, I felt kind of uncomfortable with my own writing, and I figured no one would want to sit through it because it's kind of disturbing. Like for example, for killing Narancha, I wrote that instead of being impaled immediately, Diavolo would instead be impaired with one spear at a time to draw out his agony and make him survive through it longer. Yeah, pretty fucking dark, right? So yeah, I didn't think anyone would want to hear me talk about torture, and I don't blame you, but if you guys are interested, I may make a separate video with my reimagined version of Diavolo's death. Honestly, I just don't think the details belong on YouTube. Not only did Diavolo cut many human lives short, he also did it with absolutely no remorse. You should absolutely experience more pain than the innocent people you killed, at least in my opinion. So maybe, perhaps, like I said before, Diavolo could experience a sort of death loop, but a shorter one. So he'd experience the deaths of all the people he killed, but more extreme, and then on his last death in the loop, finally die from blood loss from being impaled in the torso, since this is the way Bruno died. And that's the video for today. Again, I'm sorry, I was literally just looking at my comments on my last community post, and I realized that most of you wanted to see a Trish video first. I am so fucking sorry. I just started editing for this one first, because I had more clips for it. The ones with subtitles I have to record from YouTube, but the ones that don't have subtitles I had already had on my phone. I recorded them myself from when I watched and rewatched Golden Wind. But as for Trish, I didn't have a ton of clips of her saved, so I figured it would just be easier to do this video first because I had more clips for it. So I apologize for basically like ignoring your guys' feedback, but I hope you liked this video anyway. This was a really fun one for me to make and edit. Sorry I kind of went on my own little side rants, but I had a lot of fun with this one, and so I hope you guys enjoyed the video too. Feel free to leave me any video ideas you have in the comments. Thanks for watching. I should probably shut up because it's 6 in the morning, but I hope you guys have a good day, and I hope to see you in the next video.
Pervert camel. Pervert camel. Pervert.